I'm Hills Walton. I'm a technology strategist here at Microsoft. So that means that I work with customers across the Microsoft technology stack, so security, but also data and AI, cloud and infra, modern work, and biz apps or D365. But you can't have any of that if you haven't got things secure. I've been with Microsoft for just coming up to 2 years, and prior to that, I was a CISO, a Chief Information Security Officer at the Kordia Group. Prior to that, I was a CIO for Airways in New Zealand, so Air Traffic Control Management, and I implemented Office 365 there, so I know a bit about that. And then prior to that, I did some work overseas in the UK and London, and I led information security for the London 2012 Olympics. Also did some time on a security culture project in the sort of MI5, sort of secret services over there, which was really cool. So having a think about, how do you make people follow security policies? We tell them over and again, it just seems not to stick. The reason I was doing that particular project at that time was because I started my career as a psychologist. So that human behaviour piece is, really fascinating. And it really does match, I think, what we're looking at now in terms of this era of AI, because it's not just the technology stack that we need to secure. There are lots of process controls and people education that goes along with it to really make it work. Okay, so today I want to talk to you about securing AI. So I want to start by talking to you about, this session is really about giving you some useful frameworks to hang your knowledge off around securing AI. So we'll start with architecture and what that looks like. We'll then move to the threat landscape, and we'll have a look at some threat maps and what they look like. And then we'll finish through looking at how Microsoft secures AI platforms, because we're on this journey together. And then we'll finish off by looking at some controls. So hopefully giving you some gems or some tools in your security toolkit that you can take away and think about implementing in your own organisation or with the customers you're working with. So I want to start here because one of the things that Microsoft do, I think, really well is we've been thinking about responsible AI for about the last sort of 10 years. So this journey here in AI sort of calls out some of our technology advancements that we've done as an organisation. And you can see there are lots of different things on this particular journey, and that's because it's been moving so fast. But there's some things I want to call out in particular. So we launched our Responsible AI framework back in 2016. And so this has really guided our approach to responsible AI and building AI at Microsoft. In 2019, we did this really cool thing, was that we realised, wow, responsible AI and security of AI is such a big deal, we need to set up a separate office to manage this. Something that is separate from the engineering teams, a team of people that are going to love, own, and manage responsible AI at Microsoft and make sure everyone is doing it in the right way. And so we appointed our Chief Responsible AI Officer, who's called Natasha Crampton. And she's actually a Kiwi, which I love. I love that we have Kiwis, working in the heart and in the high areas of Microsoft. She's not the only one, by the way. We also have Dee Templeton, who was on the board of OpenAI. She actually works in the office of the technology officer at Microsoft. So she's responsible for looking at and working around what the actual technology strategy is for Microsoft. The other thing that we did is we released a framework around our Responsible AI standard in 2022. We sort of updated it and then we released it publicly. So if you haven't seen that already, please search for that online and you can find it. Just Microsoft's Responsible AI standard and the whole document comes up. It looks at our 6 principles and then it really tries to operationalise that for organisations. Because what the Chief Responsible AI Officer realised was you can't just tell engineering teams, oh, hey, can you please consider transparency and can you also consider, security? Can you also make sure that, this is fair and inclusive? You actually have to be directive through the standard and let them know what tools to put in place, what you expect of them to do through checklists and things like that. We also released another key document in 2023, which is quite a good high-level one called the AI Blueprint. So that was about how we should think about AI in terms of not just within our own organisations, but as a global community, and it looks at kind of regulation of AI and things like that. one of the things I just want to mention in there, because it was a key learning for me, was it had this really cool framework for around how you should think about AI. It was called the 3 Cs. So know your cloud. So whether it's Microsoft or whoever else it is, know your cloud and how they're managing security. Know your customers if you're using AI as well, because you need to make sure that whatever you're building is inclusive for your customers, represents them, isn't biased, that sort of thing. And know your content is the last one. So you're still responsible for your content, and you need to make sure you've got the right rule-based access and that only the right people can see that content. So know your cloud, know your customers, and know your content. So just kind of park that away in the toolkit. So these are the 6 principles that Microsoft landed on for responsible AI. What we're going to look at today is mainly around this privacy and security principle. And so just note here, we've actually put privacy and security together, which I think a lot more industry and businesses are thinking about doing, although some still keep them quite separately and have kind of separate privacy and security teams. But in relation to responsible AI, we absolutely consider them together. We're going to look at securing AI from the platform layer right up through to building applications with AI. And just so you know, what we're not going to cover today is ethics and IP and those kind of more legal and ethical risks, if that makes sense. Okay, let's get into it. So I think understanding AI architecture in a security context is one of the best places to start. And so at Microsoft, we've divided that into 3 different levels. So there's the AI usage layer, the AI application, and the AI platform. So AI usage, this is about the user interacting with an AI product. There'll be inputs and outputs that are provided. A really good example of that is Microsoft M365 Copilot. This is a SaaS product which we're giving to customers. At the application level, this is when the devs are starting to do a bit more in terms of AI. And it's very much like building any app on a cloud service, except when you're doing AI apps, it's reaching down into an AI platform to call information from. The AI platform itself is the core infrastructure for AI. So a lot of you probably won't be building at this particular level. This is where Microsoft and the sort of AI providers play. And the reason for that is it's really costly. It takes a lot of compute and things like that. But a good example of the AI platform is what Microsoft has built with Azure OpenAI service, Azure AI service. So this is where we have all our models, like GPT-4, DALL-E, Llama, that sort of thing. That's the AI platform. This I really love. When I saw this, it made so much sense to me if you're thinking about who's doing what in terms of securing AI. It probably looks really familiar to you because it's the similar to cloud services, shared responsibility model, but this is the AI flavored one. So what we're trying to pull out here is that depending on which layer you're operating at, there are things that you need to do. So even if you're thinking about the AI usage layer, so the general co-pilots, the SaaS products, there's still things in your organization that you'll need to do to make sure that's secure. You'll need to make sure that user training and accountability is in place. You'll want to implement some policies. Data governance is key here as well. If you're building applications, there are a few more things that you need to take care of. And then again, if you're working at the infrastructure level, then you're actually setting up your own LLM and compute, and you're doing pretty much the whole stack. So hopefully that's a really useful slide. By the way, if there are any slides during this presentation that you want to take a photo of, feel free to. I'm sure we'll probably be getting the slides out anyway. But in this presentation in particular, there's just some really useful diagrams of how to hang your information around all this AI securing. So feel free to whip out your phone if you need to take a shot to look at it later. So when you're thinking of shared responsibility model, a really simple comparison is to think about it like a car. So when you buy a car, you're responsible for driving it safely and maintaining it. but the car company is the one that's the car manufacturer is the one that is responsible for making sure that it's built to a particular standard and doesn't have any defects. There are also different benefits at each of these levels as well, if you're thinking about where to start with AI. So for example, at the AI platform layer, because you're looking after all of it, there's a lot more flexibility there. You can customize things, and we know that sometimes that comes at a cost and a benefit, but you're really responsible for looking after everything there. At the application layer, there are benefits as well, because you don't need to worry about the infrastructure, but you can play around with the application, and there's flexibility there. At the usage layer, there's less flexibility, but you don't have to worry about making sure you've got some of the right, those other security controls, and then you don't have to worry about the infrastructure itself. Okay, who doesn't love a good threat landscape slide? So let's have a look at that now. So if we take each of those layers, these are some of the threats that you'll see at each layer. So for example, at the AI usage layer, it's really that user interaction with the generative AI-based apps. And some of the threats that you'll see there are around sensitive information disclosure and some of that kind of shadow IT, harmful third-party LLM-based apps or plugins kind of play in here as well. So do you remember what we did a couple of years ago when ChatGPT was released and people were worried about this threat around the user interaction? Everyone just blocked ChatGPT or blocked those sites to kind of look after that threat while they were figuring out what they're dealing with. At the application layer, we start to see threats around the app's lifecycle. So some of the threats are, prompt injections. There's obviously data leak and exfiltration, and insecure plugin design can play here as well. And across both of those layers, both at the AI usage layer and the application layer, we have these sort of extended risks, which we sort of haven't had to deal with before. Not just insider risk, because that's an old risk, but an AI insider risk. So, if we've got these sort of autonomous bots in our organisation, what does that mean? We want to make sure that we're not giving these bots excessive agency, so not over-permissioning them, and also not over-relying on them as well, that we make sure that we're checking what they're doing. And then at the platform layer, you've got fundamental model and training data threats. So the training data poisoning can be an issue at this level, as well as the model theft and then model poisoning as well. But with those AI-specific things in mind, I want to take you back to this here, because this isn't an AI-specific slide at all, actually. It's just basic security hygiene. But it shows that, with basic security hygiene in place, we can actually protect against 98% of attacks. Things like having MFA, making sure that you're keeping things up to date, secure coding best practices, those kind of basic security hygienes. The reason I'm talking about them here is because sometimes we think, AI security, we don't know what that's about. We know that, this is a thing, we've got to look after it. But actually, if you're doing those basics right, attackers are not going to try and do something really kind of complicated in terms of an AI attack. Sorry, if you're not doing those basics right, they're not going to do anything complicated in terms of AI security and hacks and poisoning models. They're just going to come through those really easy vectors that you've left open. So if there's one thing you can take away from this presentation, make sure you've got those basics in place to keep your application secure. I think it's helpful for us to talk about how Microsoft does this, because it kind of brings it alive for different teams as well. So let's touch on that for a bit. So we have these principles around AI security that we have. So first of all, you'll hear lots of Microsoft people saying over and over again, ensure your data is your data. How many times have you heard that today, by the way? Curious. Has it come up yet? About 3? Yeah, no, 0. Okay, well, I'm sure it will come up in the next session as we look at Copilot for security and actually talking about LLMs. So your data is a hugely important principle to us at Microsoft. We don't use your data to train models, and your data stays within your tenant. The next principle we have is secure by design. So just as we do for all our other services, we design things securely. We've got a software development lifecycle, and we do some AI-specific things as part of that as well, which I'll talk about in a bit. And then lastly, we be secure by intention and in practice. So we try and make it really easy for you to build secure applications and do the right thing. Note I haven't said secure by default, not in this instance. That's deliberate because often if you say secure by default, people think, well, I don't have to do anything. But you are going to go off and build amazing, wonderful AI applications, and we can't cater for all the things that you're going to be doing in that space. So we try to be secure by intention and in practice instead. That said, if you're interested in secure by default, then take a look at what we're doing in our Windows operating system, particularly as we're going from Windows 10 to 11. There's some really cool things we're doing there if you want to look at that in a bit deeper. Okay, so another concern we hear about is how does Microsoft secure AI from attackers? So these are the things we do at a super high level. So we've got Microsoft Security Development Lifecycle, which I was talking about before. So we use development best practice from the start right through to the end of the development lifecycle. We look at threat modeling, and because it's AI, we have actually reviewed our software development lifecycle to consider some really unique threats that come up with AI and machine learning. We also make sure our teams follow that responsible AI standard that I talked about, Natasha, really embedding in our organisation. Part of that is a risk assessment around what the AI is and what it's going to be doing. That helps us obviously make sure it's got the right mitigations against the risks that it's coming up with. And that helps us with our internal compliance review. So we've got these things that need to happen before we even build an AI and then throughout the process as well. We also, because everything's moving so fast, we know that a lot of the development can be in the open source space. So we're committed to doing security reviews of our open source libraries. And that's absolutely prior to anything launching, but then in an ongoing manner as well. And obviously we're reporting the vulnerabilities we find to the open source library owners. And the last one is AI-specific red teaming. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. This is one of the other risks that we manage as well. So it's this risk of over-reliance. So what does that mean? That means a person taking what an AI says, not checking the sources, and just believing it sort of wholeheartedly from the start. That can take lots of different forms, as you can kind of see. So it might be, assuming the AI must be accurate. It might be that, people thinking that the AI must be doing something that, they can't check. Or maybe people are just simply too busy to check as well. So this is one of the main risks that we try and cater for. And to cater for that and mitigate it, grounding is super important. We know that really kind of dedicated specific grounding makes an AI more effective. For example, if you've played around with any of the Copilot Studio stuff, so there are general Copilots that can look at a vast array of information, but some of the real power is when you take the Copilot and you point it at a specific directory, like around a particular project or even a policy hub. The answers you get are just so much better. In addition to that, we also make sure that Microsoft's AI is really big on including references. That was one of the main differences you saw between ChatGPT when it launched versus Copilot for Web, which was Bing Copilot. We tell you where the information has come from so you can actually check. If you're not using Copilot for the web and making use of those sources, oh my gosh, please do. I try and tell as many people as I can because it's a bit of a game changer, particularly the students in your life who are probably using ChatGPT without sources, pointing them towards Copilot for the web, and then all of a sudden, they can verify where this information is going for their studies. One of the other things we do in this space is we know that the user interface is actually super important. So for example, we'll make sure that the AI doesn't sound super authoritative. So it will say things like, I found something that suggests XYZ, rather than the answer is XYZ. Just little small differences like that in the UI, which can trigger a human to think, oh, okay, I need to check that out because it's not super definitive, it's just pointing me in the right area. Did you know our global Chief Information Security Officer, in their team, they actually have 50-50 between technical people, and then the other side of it is anthropologists, people who know about culture and behaviour. Like I said, it's super fascinating how he's set up his team. This is another key risk that we take care of as well, or we know we need to manage, which is this hostile misuse. So it's when the user attempts to use a system intentionally to cause harm. So obviously they're wanting to get around safeguards in the system here. So that could be asking the application to generate malicious code, or give me instructions for a bomb. It's those kind of situations. So in this space, we use a number of different controls. They can be technical controls, but often it's kind of process controls process and policy controls here as well. So telling people, so policies that let you know what bad behaviour is when you're using AI. There's legal controls, and we're obviously reviewing the effectiveness of this all the time as well. Okay, so I touched on red teaming. I'm quite keen to come back to that. For anyone who's unfamiliar with what red teaming is, it's essentially penetration testing. So there's a team of good hackers who are trying to crack a system, or, pardon, sorry?
The green team.
Yes, that's right. They're trying to figure out, what are the ways that the system isn't working, so that further mitigations can be put in place to check the defences and make it better. So at Microsoft, we've got multiple red teams who do lots of different tests on all our platforms. But today I want to talk about AI-specific red teaming, because it is a little bit different. So for the security community, red teaming has this kind of scoped meaning. It's about a double-blind exercise, might span multiple weeks. It's got a specific goal, like trying to exfiltrate some data. It's a dedicated team of security experts who are doing that. When we think about AI-specific red teaming, it's actually a little bit different. So it takes a much wider meaning, because we're not just looking, when we're AI red teaming, we're not just looking for security vulnerabilities. We're actually looking for responsible AI kind of issues as well. And so it's looking for threats within the system, but it also might just be benign usage as well. All of these tests are trying to make sure that we can really be confident in terms of the confidentiality, integrity, availability, and also the accountability of the AI systems as well. So to bring this to life, recently the New South Wales government have developed an AI education tool. They've given it to teachers, and so teachers can use this educational AI to develop their lesson plans. They can also change their lesson plans to make them suit the way a learner likes to learn, kinesthetic, visual, audio, or the level of the student as well. So maybe a particular student can't follow exactly along with the mainstream class. They'll change the AI plan to match the learner as well, so that they can be learning while everyone else is. Also, they've given this AI to students. Before they did that, though, they had to do a vast amount of red teaming, because what's the most likely thing that students are going to do with an AI? They're going to see what profanity they can get out of it. And so they literally had teams of people trying to come up with all the swear words that they could think of and all the profanity, that students might actually generate through this AI to make sure that they could, release something that was, a safer product. It's never going to be fully 100% because language does change, but that's why they have to keep going back and continually red teaming the AI application for profanity and other things to make sure it's secure. So that's the other thing around AI red teaming as well. It's a constant process that has to happen. Okay, lastly, I want to finish by talking about controls. So we've talked about architecture, we've talked about the threat landscape and the threats that AI can suffer, and let's now talk about controls, because these are the things that I want you to be thinking about when you head back to your organisation. So again, at all the three levels, there are controls that can be put in place. And look, I'm really sorry, but we don't have a magic thing that you can put in to make this AI secure. But the good news is that the controls that you put in place are actually some of the controls that just aren't new as well. So for example, if we look at the AI platform, that software supply chain is really crucial, making sure that the providers you're working with are doing things in a secure way. Also, operational security is really important here as well. At the AI application level, also software supply chain is really important. So the reason that is because if you're developing AI and you're plugging in different vendors to things, they become part of your software supply chain. You need to make sure they're doing things in secure ways as well. And obviously the developer security and AppSec security comes into place at this AI application layer. And lastly, if we're looking at AI usage, then it's data security and also identity and access management. Let's dig down a little deeper in terms of what those actually mean, because I think these sorts of threat mapping templates are really handy in this space. If we're thinking about the different application layers, then thinking about what the vulnerabilities are, so they're in red, what the mitigations you can put in place are, they're in blue, and then in grey, those are kind of common security issues. So I think those kind of threat mapping is quite useful when you're thinking about securing AI and what controls to put in place. And if we take another example, this is the end-to-end secure AI that we have in M365 Copilot, the SaaS products that you might purchase from us. Sorry, it's not just M365, could be GitHub and other things as well. So in the AI usage level, there are absolutely things that you need to manage and keep secure. And we talked about user training so that people know how to use AI securely, making sure that they're accountable for their inputs and outputs. Also, policies in place so that people know what they can do with AI and what they shouldn't. And then the data governance piece is important as well. If it's M365 though, it is just going to follow the data governance that you already have in place. The problem is, not many organisations did that well. So a lot of people are coming back to that data governance piece and making sure that they've got the right access to the right people and haven't got everything open to the world. But as you can see in the application layer and the platform layer, there are a bunch of things that Microsoft are doing in that space to manage the security of those SaaS or kind of Copilot apps as well. If you get into extending some of our Copilot apps out, then yes, there will be a few more things at that application layer you might have to think about doing. So, these controls they're not necessarily new, it's just that we need to implement them well in the environment. And so just to wrap up, look, the environment with AI, it's really exciting, it's really dynamic, and we know that there will be threats that will come that we're not sure about today, but that's why I think it's important to think about security as this ongoing thing rather than a static thing. But then also, there are things that Microsoft are doing and doing with you as well to help us keep staying secure. So there are about 65 trillion threat signals every day that Microsoft is monitoring on your behalf. We also have really world-class global threat intelligence to monitor and track and understand attacker behaviour. So all of that is happening within the platform. But things do evolve and we do need to manage security as a team sport. Microsoft working with our customers and working with our partners, that's how we keep everything secure. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you so much. I hope you found that interesting.